Good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are calling. We're really excited to have you all today. We'll give it a few more minutes, maybe a minute or two before we get started. I still see folks coming in. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are calling from. So excited to see your faces. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a few seconds. Okay. Well, Kristen, I don't know about you. I see a slowing down. Folks are coming in. Shall we get started? Thumbs up from you. All right. Why don't you go back to the first slide really quickly? We have a full agenda, and I'd like to keep as much time as possible for your questions after the presentation today. So first of all, welcome to Building Decarbonization Policy in New Jersey webinar today. Let's give a cheer for our first call for our series in the new 2024 year. And just like that, we are in the final week of February. How did that happen? For those who might be new to our series, welcome to the Building Decarbonization's policy call, focusing on the Garden State, formerly known as the great state of New Jersey. We began these series last year, and so I encourage you to go on the website or on our YouTube channel to find last year's webinars, focusing on states like Washington, Massachusetts, Colorado, Illinois, and Maine. For those who don't know, my name is Rose Steffens Booker. I am the Director of State Mobilization here at BDC. We are one of the newer teams within BDC, and we're focused on extending our building decarb work into other states while leaning on the best practices and lessons learned in some of our seasoned states, such as New York and California. And we're really excited, and we have quite a few new teammates on the state mobilization team, and we will be letting y'all know in our upcoming newsletter. Next slide. So the Building Decarbonization Coalition, we are a coalition of interested, aligned entities focused on eliminating pollution from buildings. And when I say coalition, I'm talking like everyone from utilities, manufacturers, everyone up and down the supply chain to nonprofits, government agencies, and key elected officials. We really work to bring all folks together to harvest that alignment as a catalyst for change, and for change necessary to bring about the complete elimination of pollution from our buildings for a safer, healthier, and more affordable building where we work, live, play, and gather. Next slide. We're grateful for our Trailblazer members who make annual donations to support BDC's membership program. The financial support from these Trailblazer members allows BDC to keep all of our webinars and policy calls and other resources free and available to anyone who wants them. If you're interested in joining, please visit our website, buildingdecarb.org, to learn more. Next slide. We have so much going on, like I said, even this week alone and throughout most of the months of the year. So please sign up for our newsletter or one of the upcoming BDC Presents, which is this Thursday on equitable and affordable rate reform. Next slide. And a few logistics before we really dive in. Everyone is muted. During the Q&A, you will have the opportunity to raise your hand or ask a question via the chat. This webinar is also being recorded and will be placed in our resource library. For information on future policy calls, that's also located in our newsletter. So make sure you're on that listserv. Next slide. All right. Let's get into our panel introduction today. Next slide. First up, we have Stacy Ho Richardson. She's the Deputy Director of the Division of Clean Energy at the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. She has served on the NJBPU's Legal Division, New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and New Jersey's Governor's Office. Having also worked in the nonprofit sector and the legal aid, Stacy's background in public interest, environmental, and natural resources policy and law is mission-based, with a focus on building an inclusive and equitable green economy. Dr. Barb Blumenthal is the Research Director for the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, which advocates for cost-effective clean energy policies to achieve deep decarbonization. Dr. Blumenthal collaborates with national experts to develop foundational policy strategies and regulatory approaches for New Jersey, and with a wide range of environmental justice and conservative advocates to advance affordable and effective clean energy policies. Dr. Blumenthal has a PhD in management from the University of Michigan. And finally, Elyse Pivnick. Ms. Pivnick has over 30 years of experience developing and managing environmental health projects in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. In 1999, she created ISLE's Environmental Health Initiative with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funds. The program has since grown to address a broad range of policy and practice challenges of lead poisoning, asthma, pest management, weatherization, and most recently, building electrification. She's particularly interested in working across silos to solve environmental health problems. Ms. Pivnick is the former National Center for Healthy Housing Board Chair and now serves as an emeritus board member. She has a master's and city planning degree from the University of Pennsylvania. So with that, next slide, I will hand it over to Stacy Ho Richardson. Stacy, please take it away.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks, everybody, for having me here. I recognize some of you who are in the audience today, so great to see you. I'm happy to be with you all. We can go to the next slide. And to next. So just wanted to give you an overview of what I'll be touching on today, just really trying to lay some of the context for what my colleagues are going to be talking about. So we'll just talk about New Jersey's climate goals and executive orders overall. I'll touch on the Clean Buildings Working Group Roadmap, which BPU was part of, and then talk about some specific initiatives from the BPU. So in terms of New Jersey's climate goals, the global was we have three main targets, two targets plus an interim target. So from the Global Warming Response Act, this just shows you that we're aiming to reduce statewide emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. 80% below 2006 levels by 2050. And then in the middle of that, reducing emissions 50% below 2006 levels by 2030. And then I think that was actually a bullet right there. So you can ignore that last one. Next slide. So this shows our progress to date. We actually we exceeded our 2020 reduction goal by 18%. So that's the 90.97 dot that you can kind of see there. It's a little faint, but you can see that it's below the black dot above it, which was the 2020 goal. And then you can see the other dots on this chart showing where we're looking to get to by by 2050 and actually and 2030 as well. Next slide. This slide shows you, based on NJDEP's most recent analysis from 2022, their 2022 mid-cycle update report, where the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from in New Jersey, with the transportation sector contributing the most, and then the residential and commercial building sector second, followed by electric generation. And this slide shows you some of the key strategies to achieve our 80% reduction by 2050 goal. In the transportation, buildings, and electric generation sectors. So just kind of listed here that we would need to have rapid adoption of these three key strategies, including number 2, for our purposes, converting space and water heating in buildings to electric heat. And this is from the DEP's 80 by 50 report. So quickly, in New Jersey, the residential sector, building sector, relies predominantly on natural gas, 87%. And then on the next slide, you'll see similar on the commercial side, it's 82.5%. And this is based on the 2020 80 by 50 report. That's kind of our starting point. Most recently, in February of last year, Governor Murphy signed 3 executive orders, moving the 100% clean energy goal from 2050 to 2035. Also setting some specific clean buildings targets to achieve by 2030. I think many of you may already know about this, but 400,000 residential units electrified, and I just put in the definition of electrified there. 20,000 commercial spaces or public facilities electrified, and also 10% of low and moderate income units made electrification ready. In addition, for EO 317, the BPU is leading a stakeholder proceeding on the future of natural gas, future of the natural gas utility. Touching on the New Jersey Clean Buildings Working Group, this was an initiative between the governor's office and the BPU, and also involved many sister state agencies listed here. We brought together a broad and diverse group of stakeholders to look at how best to advance clean buildings in the state. We ended up establishing these subgroups listed here, kind of focusing in on some specific topics. The outcome of this work will be a strategic roadmap with recommendations to create greener and cleaner buildings. And we are, the governor's office is leading that, and we are looking forward to that roadmap sometime this spring. This is BPU and our mission. We regulate the utilities, but we're also very much involved in the clean energy, advancing clean energy in the state. And then the next slide, just some basics about our clean energies program. We fund a lot of our work through the societal benefits charge on ratepayers' bills. Next slide. An important law in New Jersey is the Clean Energy Act of 2018. Among other mandates, the CEA called for 2% annual electricity reductions annually within 5 years of implementation of utility programs, and also 0.75% annual gas reductions in the same period. So, per this act, the state established new EE programs on July 1st, 2021. So we are in the first, what we call triennium or 3-year program cycle of that, of those programs. And going, aiming for the 5th year to achieve those 2% and 0.75% goals. The EMP, this is the Energy Master Plan. The most recent EMP was from 2019 and called for 100% clean energy by 2050. And these are the key strategies. This is a very important roadmap for New Jersey's energy, clean energy, especially for those of us who are working in the policy space. And it's sort of a guiding light. And on the next slide, you'll see that Governor Murphy called for an update to the EMP, which will be also occurring this year in 2024. So there will be stakeholder public hearings on the EMP, and BP will be helping to lead the development of the next EMP. Okay, we'll spend a few minutes here in terms of what BPU is doing right now. So I referred to the Triennium 1, which is the first 3-year program cycle of energy efficiency programs pursuant to the Clean Energy Act. The BPU established the framework for the second 3-year program cycle, or Triennium 2, which will start on January 1st. We are really looking forward to this next cycle because, Triennium 1 was the first time that we had done this in New Jersey, where there are a lot of lessons to learn as we ramp up our EE programs and all the energy savings that will result from these programs. These are, financial incentives for all for residential, commercial, all sorts of customers to reduce energy in buildings. And specifically, the board established a framework for the first building decarbonization startup programs in New Jersey. So based on the utilities' proposals for their portfolios of energy efficiency programs, which they submitted to the board in December, they proposed budgets of $2.3 billion average on an annual basis, including 350 million over the Triennium 2 period specifically for the building decarb programs. So staff and the New Jersey Division of Rate Counsel and parties to those proposals are reviewing them, and we'll be having discussions about the content of those proposals, and the board will the board is expected to act on those proposals this year, later this fall. And so in addition to energy efficiency and building decarb, the utilities also submitted demand response program proposals, as well as some other additional utility-led program proposals. Then on the Inflation Reduction Act, the home rebates are also, we plan to layer them in with our existing programs to the extent that we can. And so we are looking forward to implementing those rebates at the same time as Triennium 2, or very closely aligned with Triennium 2. Again, this will happen in 2025. These will be both weatherization and electrification rebates, as I'm sure many of you know already. And there's, we had a technical conference on these rebates a few months ago. We are looking at program design options, and we'll be planning to come back out with a proposal for stakeholder comment. We're also looking to engage a program administrator to help deliver these rebates, so that they can benefit customers, residential customers. In addition, there's a new construction energy efficiency program that the BPU is running through our clean energy program, another opportunity to really reduce emissions from new construction of all kinds. And also want to mention the RGGI funding. The current strategic funding plan has 40% of proceeds, both from the BPU and the Economic Development Authority, dedicated to energy efficiency and BD, with the BPU's focus on low and moderate income residences. So an exciting example of this is the whole house pilot, which is happening in Trenton. We're doing it, in partnership, including with ISLES, and to remove health and safety barriers, perform energy efficiency upgrades, and explore electrification in a subset of those 100 homes, and then potentially look at scaling it statewide. So I think that is that concludes the content of my presentation today. We do have monthly energy efficiency stakeholder meetings for anyone who is interested in regulatory and program updates, and always are looking to stay in touch with our stakeholders in New Jersey, and also our colleagues in other states. So thank you very much again for having us.
Thanks so much, Stacy. Really appreciate it. Next, we have Elyse.
Hi, everybody. Elyse Pivnick here from ISLES. We're a community development and environmental organization based in Trenton, though we work statewide and we also work nationally. Our mission is to foster self-reliant families in healthy, sustainable communities. And we have a lot of programs we've developed over the years, a lot of activities, and we share what we learn with others who can make a difference. Next slide. Just to give you a little taste of the work that we do, we have tested over 4,000 homes for hazardous lead and asthma triggers. We test about 200 to 300 houses a year. We've tested more than 2,000 homes for lead in water. We've created a nationally recognized home repair service that combines lead safety, energy efficiency, and healthy homes retrofits. We've completed 585 homes, made lead safe, and 700 energy efficiency improvements, and still counting. We operate a job training center where we've trained, actually at 4,500 individuals at entry-level jobs in lead-safe home repairs. We've trained contractors, community health workers, social workers, building inspectors, energy efficiency workers, and more. So we're imagining building electrification is going to be fitting in there soon. Next slide. Other things to know about us is we operate an electrical vehicle program. DEP recognized that electric vehicles were not getting to low-income communities, and they invited us to start one. So we're very excited about that. It's just been going for about 4 months now. We operate a big community gardening program. We've cleaned up brownfields, work with community health workers. We're policy champions. So just a little bit about us. Next slide. So why building electrification for a healthy home? And I want to emphasize here, the reason we have our pathway in to electrification is really, we consider it the next step of a healthy home. We know it protects health. And I understand that this is a pretty familiar audience with the health problems and the costs, et cetera, and the environmental problems by fossil fuels. So we're not going to go into the details here, but we know that we can protect health, we can improve the environment, and we know we're going to save consumers money. And Barb's going to talk more about that specifically for New Jersey. Next slide. So it's a special approach, we think, for addressing fossil fuel use in low-income households and homes, especially vulnerable to pollution from buildings. And the units are smaller in size in our oldest cities and our low-income communities. There's more people per home, so the pollutants don't get diluted. It's from the smaller unit, and obviously more people per home. It's crowded. Older homes known to have much poorer ventilation. A lot of people we know use their stove and oven for supplemental heat. There's higher exposure to outdoor pollution, and indeed the greater asthma burden, unquestionably in Trenton and our oldest cities here in New Jersey. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about the obstacles of working in low-income cities here in New Jersey, and I think everywhere, our solutions, and then the opportunities ahead. So the majority of New Jersey housing stock is single-family or multi-unit row housing, and in our oldest cities. And there's majority renters in our oldest cities. So you may be surprised to know that Newark, New Jersey has 75% renters. So it's not so easy to just go into, a person's house and say, oh, we've got a great idea for you. They're not in any position to implement that idea. So, and often these oldest, most poorly maintained houses are also the least energy efficient. They're difficult to retrofit because there's a lot of structural problems. Everything from the roof may be leaking, the stairs down to the basement may be unstable. There's other unsafe conditions. There's pest problems and mold problems. And these are things that require us to turn away from doing other healthy homes retrofits, like lead safe home repairs. And we encounter occupant resistance. And here we've got a program that's free for people, and people aren't always so interested in inviting us into their home. And there's a lot of landlord resistance because they don't live in the houses. And so you got a challenge here. Next slide. And we have poorly coordinated housing repair programs, and this is not unique to New Jersey because New Jersey is head of the class in its lead safe home repair work and its weatherization work. But we can do this better. Right now, we have separate and cumbersome application processes. You're asking a low-income family to submit way too many forms to verify their status on things. You've got separate and sometimes contradictory regulations for how things work. For our weatherization program, you're not even, until very recently, you couldn't even fuel switch. So there's no indoor air quality standards. And again, that's not just unique to New Jersey. There's limited incentives for replacement for with electric devices. And we know that's going to be changing with what's ahead here in New Jersey. And really important, it's nearly impossible to blend funds. So you've got funds to make a home less safe, but the weatherization program is completely separate, and it's a challenge. And now we're talking about trying to building electrification funds into it. So it's a challenge. And most important probably, or most significant here, there's very limited demand right now for electrification in our lowest income communities. So I'm going to talk about a good example of that changing here in New Jersey. So next slide. So we'd like to see, streamline and integrate housing repair programs, incentivize reduction of greenhouse gases and electric devices, create a single application process, put all those home improvement funds in one bucket. You got IRA funds, ARPA funds, HUD, state funds, weatherization, you name it. Put them all in a bucket and let us pull the funds as we need them per home. And there's, we've got a lot of clever computer scientists. They could figure this out. And it's really a new way of doing business. You're asking to blend funds across silos. Very difficult to do, and I don't underestimate the challenge here in our city, our cities here in New Jersey. Next slide. And it's really time for us to push back on opposition messages. We know that fossil fuel merchants and other groups are strongly opposed to electrification. It interrupts their business model. And we need to develop that demand system for building electrification devices. We want people in the community to be asking for it, not us coming down, top down and saying, oh, we have a good idea for you. And you're going to need to educate. And a colleague said to me, you're going to have to fund outreach like we have never done before. We want to engage, we're suggesting you want to engage community and social service organizations and social media. So years ago, when we had a lead safe, a free lead hazard testing kit here in New Jersey, they were giving them away for free, and they found out no one was using them because no one actually understood what it was about. And once they brought in community groups and other social service organizations to help hold education sessions and training on it, it worked. And we think it's important to emphasize the opportunity for lower cost air conditioning, and organize those community members, especially tenants, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And we need to train the workforce. The workforce is not ready for this as it currently is positioned, and you want to make sure that there's demand for the jobs. You can be training all these people to install heat pumps, but if no one wants a heat pump, you're kind of putting contractors in a tough situation. Next slide. And the most promising is to start with new or gut rehab, multifamily construction, all with new incentives to build all electric. You can organize your community members, especially tenants. There's a great group here that I just met on a webinar last week called Make the Road, based in Jersey City. And they've been doing all this kind of tenant organizing, and their members want electric buildings. They're asking for it themselves. And I imagine they're going to get one of the first projects here in New Jersey. Explore thermal energy networks, and they're identifying waste heat opportunities and adjacent buildings so they can get started. It's very, very exciting. And we're looking to have innovative housing financing available in New Jersey to encourage electric buildings. We've got a lot of funds that are available for affordable housing. We want to add in the building electrification piece. Next slide. So there's great opportunities to think big in New Jersey. We've got this energy master plan. We've got executive orders that reflect building electrification values. We've got new legislation and regulations coming online, new funding. We've got the Inflation Reduction Act coming. There's goodwill within New Jersey government leadership to best serve residents, and you heard that from Stacy. And I think there's an understanding that there's a need to work across silos. This is there's a paradigm shift that we're asking people to undertake and accept. Next slide. And if this all seems impossible, did you know that our streets were once completely lit with gas-fueled lights at night? It was smelly, they were dirty, there was excessive heat, fire hazards, and there was incredible resistance to installing electric streetlights. It's the same resistance today for converting to electric devices in our homes, right? In the past, just like today, the gas industry was well established, very profitable, had many supporting industries, people who made pipes and glass and the iron that was needed for the street lights. They sponsored legislation against the electric lights. So it's a huge conceptual leap. So I'll just leave you with this thought. It's electric David and gas Goliath. So thank you for your time.
Oh, that was wonderful, Elyse. Thank you so much. Great reminder. All right. With that, we'll turn it to Barbara. Barbara, why don't you go ahead and take it away? Oh, come off mute.
Okay, you want to hear me? Okay.
We do.
Let me start by saying a little bit about New Jersey Conservation Foundation, which has been around for more than 60 years in New Jersey. It's the largest conservation organization in the state and has preserved more than 140,000 acres. About 10 years ago, we got into clean energy policy work. And so over the last 5 years or 6 years, I've focused much of our attention on building electrification, and we've been leading a group of advocates within the state to advance these policies. So, next slide. I'm going to talk about a few. My colleagues have already laid out a lot of the exciting developments. There's a few specific opportunities I want to talk about. And what are we doing next? Where do we go from here? This is the moment to really launch a campaign on building electrification. So I'm going to cover incentives, cost savings in New Jersey. I'm trying to think about what are things that are different about New Jersey that might be informative for other states. The math around cost savings is actually quite attractive. We have a huge opportunity in air conditioner replacement, and the roadmap is coming. So like the timing this year is going to be a big year for advancing policies. And it's the right time to launch a communications campaign and legislation. So we're going to get to that. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about what is different about New Jersey, which is we have, sometimes you see the data that says 72% of all homes use gas, sometimes it's 80. There's a couple of different federal sources, so it depends on which one you're referring to. It's a lot. It's a very high penetration of gas compared to other states, even other states in our region. And we have an abundant supply of gas. Unlike other parts of the country, there are no gas pipeline bottlenecks. So we have plenty of gas, and most residential commercial buildings rely on gas. Fortunately for us, if you switch the math, you can do the analysis, and the Acadia Center did this analysis looking at each utility current rates. We've done it a couple of times now. We've done an update last year, and you can ask a very specific question for a given household in a given territory. What's the difference between paying your energy bill on a monthly basis for gas appliances compared to what you would be paying if you switch to electric? And the answer is actually quite favorable in New Jersey. At recent prices, you save money everywhere. Just that simple switching from gas to electric. And that's not even if you included some weatherization measures, which we always recommend doing, then you would save even more. But just the math around gas prices to electric prices are extremely favorable in some territories, a little bit less favorable in others, but no matter where you are, you can save money. In South New Jersey natural gas territory and South Jersey gas territories, you can save 30 to 40% on your energy bills just with the conversion. This is not including weatherization, just the math. They have relatively low electric rates and relatively high gas rates in those parts of New Jersey. So this is a policy issue in every state. You do have to look at what happens to energy bills. So for us, it's actually an advantage rather than a disadvantage. Next slide. Another interesting fact about New Jersey, which very few people would know, 61% of homes have central air conditioning, not just air conditioning, because it's over 90%, but central, which means they have ductwork. Compare that to New York, which has 29% of homes have central air conditioning, and Massachusetts is 32%. So this is a very high number of homes. And when we add in other reasons for having ductwork, anyway, it turns out that about 75% of homes in New Jersey have existing ductwork. And that's important when we talk about electrification one home at a time, because we know there's two options. One is a central system and the other are mini splits. And often the cost of installation of mini splits, it's a different construction project. So the cost can be higher initially just to do that work, where swapping out an air conditioner with a heat pump doesn't require much at all. It's a swap of existing, the placement and all of that is the same. So you can swap out an air conditioner, as I just did, replacing a 3-ton air conditioner with a 4-ton heat pump, because 4 tons covers the heating load. And that's the brilliant thing about having ductwork. Ductwork is sized to deliver heat. So heating load is bigger than air conditioning load. So New Jersey is pretty well, we are prepared for people to switch air conditioning units and start displacing gas consumption immediately, working their way toward replacing all of their, if they have more than one air conditioning unit, then suddenly you don't need your gas furnace or boiler anymore. So current installation of centralized heat pumps for heating and cooling is 5%. It's not a big number compared to some other states, but it's growing rapidly. We see this from manufacturer and distribution data. And the point of a recent BDC report on this topic is that if everybody who's looking for a new air conditioner bought a heat pump, by 2030, we'd have almost 2 million heat pumps installed in New Jersey. So it's a massive opportunity, and we have to figure out how to maximize that. Next slide. These are all opportunities. Everything that Stacy just described, it's hugely important. The roadmap coming out, it'll address building codes, workforce development, market transformation. There's electric grid planning going on. The gas planning proceeding that's going on will also produce a report by around September this year. And then there's a new effort, as we heard an announcement with 9 other states about looking at regulations on fossil fuel appliances based on air quality standards. So there's a lot of policy work going on. Next slide. And the headline on that previous one was it's a race. Let me explain to you about the politics of New Jersey. Governor Murphy has been a clean energy champion. From the first few months he was in office, we passed this massive legislation. And quite frankly, it was after 8 years of not having done anything because of the former governor. So there was a lot of catching up to do. And our poor staff at the Board of Public Utilities has been running at full speed ever since, implementing a huge number of new programs and policies. Well, Governor Murphy has 2 years left. New Jersey is we have off-year elections, so he has 2 years. A new governor will be in place in 2026, so we don't know who that will be, but we like the work we've been able to do under Governor Murphy. So there is a bit of a race to see how much we can get locked down, really nailed down firmly, so that whoever is future administrations can continue to make progress and not be tempted to go backwards. So preparing for all of this is the year, 2024, is the year to really advance legislation. Because we've had no legislation to date on anything to do with electrification of buildings. So it's time to do a couple of basic steps. And before we do that, we wanted to make sure that we are educating people. Over the last 3 years, there has been a massive misinformation campaign in New Jersey. It started about 2020 when the Energy Master Plan, Governor Murphy's Energy Master Plan was introduced, and there was a backlash, and they started talking about lots of different angles that are not true. Building seems to be what they've landed on as a particularly juicy issue that they keep hammering on, taking away your gas stoves, it'll cost too much, things like that. So it was time for us, and we fortunately got some resources last year to do this, to launch a proactive messaging campaign. This is one of the ads that we ran in all the major publications in New Jersey, all the major political publications where legislators and policy folks would see it, and it was highly effective. We also know from our polling that the public in New Jersey, even before we did this, they were strongly supportive of electric buildings. They understand that they are healthier and that they're good for the environment. So this is important. We did this campaign in the fall and we're starting up again now. And I think that's important as we head into a whole series of policy initiatives, as Stacy described, that we kind of continue to build momentum and visible public support for building electrification. Next slide. What's on the docket right now is a very basic bill. It's called S24249, which what Stacy described is BPU is advancing new building electrification, or we call it building decarbonization program, startup programs. So we want to make it a permanent thing so that future BPUs are told you must direct the electric utilities to do building decarbonization programs. So it's nothing different than what's going to happen anyway for the next 3 years, but it will ensure that that continues. So that's an important sort of foundational step that we want to see in legislation. It's coming up soon. We hope to, get legislation passed this year. We know the administration is very interested in a clean heat standard, which begins to get at the issue of gas utilities playing a constructive role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then there's many other, the roadmap will give us a laundry list of other topics that will need to be tackled, some through regulations, but some of it would be better in legislation. Next slide. And my last point is about what Elyse was talking about. So we're doing this legislative work, we're doing a communications campaign, and I have to say that we have a big coalition. There's a new name called CLEAN. So that's what you saw in that previous ad. It's organizations like New Jersey Conservation Foundation, ISLES, Natural Resource Defense Council, League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, Environmental Defense Fund, NJ Peak, which is an equity group. Those are the leaders of the CLEAN campaign. And we also collaborate and are working with other groups like New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, Make the Road, Environment New Jersey. So this is an issue that unites all of the environmental groups, which doesn't always happen, but everybody is supportive of decarbonizing buildings. So there's a big effort. And one of the important pieces is what Elyse was describing. We have to go into communities and not just come to those communities with, hey, we have a great idea. We would like to tear up your street and do something to you. No, we want to educate people about what's coming, about energy bills and what's likely to happen to their gas bills in the future. There's a lot of education that has to happen about healthy homes, and create the initial evidence is that people are very quickly on board with and are asking for investments in building decarbonization in their communities. So I'm a little afraid we're going to be way too successful too quickly, and then we're going to have to come up with resources to fund scoping studies. We can begin to identify good areas, good neighborhoods for decarbonization, and then we're going to need to put some money into first scoping studies, and then more detailed engineering studies, and then fund the work. We know that there's pockets of federal money out there. There's even some pockets of state resources that we can tap into, but it's going to take us some ability to identify all the possible resources and tap into them, and that takes staff. So this is where I get a little worried. Elyse and I can't do this by ourselves. We actually need some help, particularly at the community level. And BDC did this great report called Neighborhood Scale Decarbonization. People are very excited about it, but we're beginning to see it's going to take resources to actually be able to get past the education stage and go further with it. So I'm going to end right there.
Thank you so much, Barbara. What a fascinating overview and with key insights on what's going on in New Jersey on the political stage. So thanks so much. Looking at the time, I think we have some time for a Q&A. I'm going to give folks a little bit of a breather to marinate on all of the delicious information that you three all just provided. And why don't I start with a question, and folks, please feel free to raise your hand and come off mute or put your questions in the chat once they start to percolate up. All right, so why don't I, Barb, I'll give you a second to take a beat. Elyse, why don't I start with you? 5 years from now, and then we'll go round robin. 5 years from now, what do you hope the state will have accomplished in terms of its climate equity and building decarbonization goals? And feel free to kind of like take that down to the granular community-based work that we all know needs to happen in tandem.
Well, I certainly hope they've done a very successful communication campaign so that people understand this is a choice that is good for them. And maybe we'll even have great subsidies so everyone will be able to have this. That's a little unrealistic. But I also would like to see, blended housing programs. Building electrification should be part of the menu for home improvements for low-income people. We have a terrific state program on lead, and at Isles we can go ahead and also correct for asthma triggers in the home, so mold, moisture, and pests. Put it all together. If you're going into the house for one thing, try and get it all done at the same time.
Thanks. Such great advice. Stacy, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that communications is essential, and training, for our workforce, the existing contractors or existing workers, as well as those who are transitioning, who would like to transition into the clean energy space. In addition to, we'll have the Inflation Reduction Act rebates, but, continuation of the state rebates and incentives so that we can, continue the momentum, and see how close we can get to the 90% of buildings electrified before 2050, way before 2050.
Way before 2050, here's hoping. All right, Barbara, why don't you round us out? 5 years from now, what do you hope the state will have accomplished?
I think we have an opportunity in New Jersey to build on the great work that's been done in Massachusetts, New York, and other states. We have an abundance of buildings. That's one of the things we were really good at. We have cities with amazing thermal resources that are existing. We have warehouses. We have a lot of frozen food warehouses. We have data centers. I'm hoping that we can really identify cost-effective thermal energy networks, and have not just, we know they can work. I don't even want to use the word pilots. We know thermal energy networks work. They work around the world. But to find a way of doing them in a community at a scale that has an impact and that is cost-effective is a lower cost strategy. So one of the keys is to find buildings when City Hall hasn't been touched for 30 years and is in need of repairs, when that there's affordable housing that is right. It's not always investing a lot of new dollars. It's actually just making up the marginal difference between you're going to renovate anyway, we can do it this way or we can do it that way. And so that little marginal difference, I would love to be able to say 5 years from now, we have figured out how to do cost-effective building decarbonization.
Great, great. Let me look. Any questions on the chat that have come through? Awkward pause for raised hands. Coming off mute. Okay, I'll send out another question. This might come out as a surprise one for y'all. What is one thing you have learned through your building decarbonization ad hoc work that you wish you knew when you were first getting started? Anyone want to take it first?
Well, at least I went first before. Let's see. I mean, I haven't been involved all that long. I've been involved in the healthy homes world, but I see how it just, it fits into healthy homes. One of the things when we go in, we look at ventilation, we look at weatherization, we look at asthma. These are things we're already doing in the so-called healthy homes world. And this just fits right in. And it really makes sense to combine programs.
Yeah. Barbara, Stacy? Barb, where did you go? You're smiling at me.
One thing that I wish I had known sooner, we have some great champions in the legislature, on the Senate and the Assembly side, and I wish I'd gotten to know them 5 years ago. So it's working, and there's interest and excitement, and the time is right. But I'm more of a policy person, so this getting to know legislators and their staff and all of that took me a little bit longer to figure that out.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, from my work on the federal level. And I think to answer my own question, because I think it's a good one, when I'm a bureaucrat policy maker, by trade. And the more I speak from the heart and from my own experiences, the more alignment I find with the various stakeholders. And we've got the facts behind us. Don't tell people. But if we can sometimes put that to the side and start from our personal experiences, I think we all want healthy homes, healthy buildings, reduced asthma rates, all of the above. And I find that helps to cut through some of the tension when we have to come together sometimes in coalition. What's up, Kristen?
Yeah, just elevating a question from the chat, and then I have a question as well. So the first is just about what are the average electric rates in New Jersey? And then I'd love to know, in terms of the coalition that is building decarb policies forward, who is missing from the table, or who do you think is needed as a partner to achieve your goals?
Well, the first one we had on electric rates, does anyone know that top of mind?
So that's the Acadia study. We'll send a link to that. And there's nobody else that's done a study other than BPU. We're the only ones that commissioned a study to actually look at New Jersey rates. So if they're citing some data that says it's not true, I don't know what they're citing, but nobody else has done that kind of very detailed look at it.
Well, maybe in terms of who's missing from these coalitions is really to bring in the business community in a way that's on our team instead of just on the other team. We don't really have business exactly involved because we assume that they're all in the fossil fuel team, but maybe not. And we're already talking about doing more community organizing, and bringing in the schools and youth, having curriculum about energy in the schools. I know that started here in New Jersey, but we're really talking about a major paradigm shift. So there's nobody that shouldn't be under the tent, so to speak.
Somebody asked average electric rates. They do vary by utility, but about 15-16 cents per kilowatt hour.
Other questions? Do you see anything else in the chat, Kristen? Barbara, did you want to answer Kristen's question about in coalition in these groups that are forming for the movement? Is there anyone that we're seeing that needs to be at the table that's not there yet?
Yeah, I think Elyse has a good point about businesses, but it's manufacturers, everybody that's involved in that supply chain needs to get a little more loud Like, we would like to invite them to hearings and write op-eds. And so we're working on that, but they're out there, you know. Mitsubishi built a 400,000 square foot facility in New Jersey last year because they say that America is becoming a heat pump nation. Well, I want them to come to a hearing and say that. So,
You know, another group that I think would be good to have specially targeted incentives and programs for are our landlords. Right? We have in our oldest cities, we've got so many people that are renting. And how do we talk about, you know, getting the consumer to make a choice, but we really need to do something to make a landlord make the best environmental choice. And I imagine there's a number of things through tax incentives, or I don't know, all sorts of things that are available to the real estate industry. So I'd like to see a group of landlords somehow involved.
I love that. Yeah. Involved and interested to get involved.
Right, not fighting, you know, be on our team, right?
Great.
I have to say, this has been extremely useful because we have this example from Madison, New Jersey. I think Elyse and I, and maybe Stacy, has had the same experience. We work on this stuff, but New Jersey's got a big state, well, geographically kind of small, but lots of people. And we don't know what's going on. I didn't know about that. There's an all-electric affordable housing unit that's being built, and I didn't know about it. So we just need to, you know, kind of spread out, get more resources, and I think there's probably a lot more going on in New Jersey than we know about.
I love that point. Resources. Kristen, I see your hand up.
Yes, just elevating what might be our last question from the chat. So it's about building trust with communities. So based on your experience, what are some recommendations for building trust with the LMI communities, with electrification, especially kind of the discourse of like fossil fuels can be intimidating, and healthy homes tends to be the better word choice. So what are some other words or some other framing that you can use to build trust and make this a less intimidating process?
Elyse, why don't you kick us off? I have some thoughts of my own, but I
would say that a word that communicates very well is health. And lead with health, not climate change, not, you know, I don't know. People, of course, respond to their electric rates and with their bills, but health is I continue to observe it's a very compelling way to get people's attention. Everyone wants to take good care of their own health, their children's health especially. So that's one way I'd go.
Yeah. I was going to say the same exact thing. The health and the heart. That's where to start. And, you know, in some of my previous work, we really tried to find community champions. A lot of faith leaders fill that role, and starting kind of with that connection and building that and showing up in communities. Your presence means a lot, and not just once, not just twice, the ongoing commitment to be there, and to meet folks where they are, not just by word, but by action. And my own community has really won even my family members over, the biggest skeptics in the world. So that's my thought. Well, I see we're at the minute mark. I see now our chat is like popping off. So we've got a lot of follow-ups to do. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Thank you so much, Barbara, Stacy, and Elyse. Really appreciate your insights and your time and your civil service and commitment to this movement and this work. Keep it up, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.